Let's start with the easy question. Based on what you know now, how bad could it be?
Bad. I mean, it could be really bad. We have not been hit by a hurricane in over 90 years, so the odds have been against us increasingly so. And we knew that day would come. Fortunately, we trained for it. All of these folks here, we do this all year round in preparation for this, knowing full well that someday our number may be up. We didn't anticipate this one coming, although once it started to make that western jog, we really amped this up full time. So, I mean, we're prepared. Our plans are in place. The assets are deployed. Manpower is all in. So we're ready. I mean, we're ready for this.
Of the three principal effects, wind, storm surge, and flooding, what's going to be the worst?
Surge. I mean, certainly that's the worst for us. I mean, we'll survive the wind. You know, there will be damage. There will be trees down. There will be some structures that will be impacted. The rainfall we're kind of accustomed to living here in the tropics. The problem is the ground is already saturated. So when we get that much rain, you're going to have a lot of standing water in places that tend to be low-lying. But for us, it's always the surge. We're a low-lying community. We're on the water. I mean, if we had a Cat 3 that came right up Tampa Bay, my office in downtown Tampa would be 15 feet underwater. I don't think that's going to be the case, but, you know, that's what we train for.
I have seen forecasts for a surge as high as 9 feet. Is that what you're expecting?
We plan for that. We hope that doesn't occur. 9 feet would be pretty devastating for us, particularly given the areas that would be affected the most.
What would a surge like that do to Tampa?
It would devastate significant parts of downtown, where I live on Davis Island, Harbor Island. Some of the more affluent areas along Bayshore Boulevard would all be affected. It would be, you know, I don't want to say catastrophic because that's a relative term, but it would be really, really damaging for us.
When we talk, or when you talk about devastating, what do you mean? What is it going to look like? What's devastation?
You know, I always use Andrew as the model, and that was total devastation. I mean, I saw what happened to Katrina. I see what's going on in Harvey. There are degrees of devastation. I don't think we're going to see a Harvey here in that level of destruction. But I think if we took a direct hit, if the storm lingered as opposed to moving quickly up the state, you know, we could see some significant impacts.
Based on what you know now, based on the signals you're getting from the National Hurricane Center, what is the worst case scenario?
I think you just talked about it. I think it's 100-mile-an-hour winds for a sustained period of time, you know, 9 to 10, 11 inches of rain, and then 5 to 10 feet of storm surge. I mean, that would be pretty tough for us. You know, that is our lot in life. You know, we're prepared to deal with it. We are Tampa tough, and we will continue, and we're going to be okay when this is all said and done.
Let's talk about preparations. Not the stuff you've been doing for the past 48 hours, or even the training that people here have been undertaking for years. Broadly speaking, how prepared is the city for a Category 3 or worse storm?
You know, I don't know that anybody really is when it gets down to it. I mean, you can train for it, you can prepare for the aftermath of it. In the middle of it, it's just in God's hands. I think we're as ready as any city could be, and here's the difference this year. I think what you are seeing now from the federal level to the state level to the local level, it's been seamless. Everyone is coordinated. There's not a lot of drama, not a lot of silos. The governor has been tremendous in support of local jurisdictions. I talked to Senator Rubio today. The feds are engaged on this. I mean, everybody is working towards the same goal, which isn't oftentimes what happens.
But unlike other cities, so few buildings in Tampa are hurricane-proof, and the building standards here are not as stringent as they are in some other counties like Miami-Dade and Broward. Why is that?
Well, I think Miami learned a painful lesson through Andrew, and I think as a result of that destruction, they implemented some really, really tough building codes and hurricane standards. The rest of us have not ever been through that. Florida's never experienced another hurricane like Andrew. We've never seen a hurricane with the depth and the breadth of what we're looking at right now. I don't think it will be as intense as Andrew. I don't think the winds will be as impactful, but I do think it's going to cause chaos as it moves through the state.
As you know, city zoning allowed for a lot of waterfront condo construction.
Yeah, that's why people live here.
City invested in port upgrades. A lot of money was spent on Tampa General Hospital. Come Monday morning, will those look like mistakes?
I don't know that we had a choice. I mean, the port has been there for a long period of time. Tampa General was built, I think, in the 20s. that is our world-class trauma unit. They have spent a lot of money hardening that target. They have done everything that they could possibly do to avoid what might occur over the next couple days. Sure, it's on an island. It's where I live. If the bridge goes out, they will be self-contained. They will be able to handle that until reinforcements are able to get to them. They have moved all the generators and the computer systems up above, hardened the entire infrastructure. They're as well prepared as any hospital I would submit in America. The port, we will probably have the port shut down for a period of time. That impacts fuel supply throughout the state of Florida, fuel supply to the airport, fuel supply all the way to Orlando. So, you do the best you can with the resources that you have.
You're aware that people who have studied the situation say that for years, Tampa hasn't done enough to prepare for a major hurricane, or for that matter, rising sea levels, or a more adverse climate. Would you agree?
Sure, I would agree. Yeah, but I think that would put every city in the state of Florida in the same category. I mean, I saw the Washington Post story. The bulk of it was focused on Pinellas County. But sure, any city in Florida is not ready for what we're about to experience. Even had this hit Dade County harder, you still would have seen significant devastation. There are still going to be people who will want to rebuild on the water. Climate change is a relatively recent phenomenon in terms of the awareness by local governments. We tend to be more aggressive about it than the federal government does, because we recognize, because we live here and see the impacts of climate change. So, we got a long way to go to be perfect, but you do what you can with what you got.
What preventive measures have you taken specifically to protect public infrastructure?
Well, just within the last 2 years, finally we got a funding source that enabled us to really invest in our infrastructure system, water and sewer in particular. Just in the last couple months, we have removed 50 tons of debris from our stormwater system. That's debris that was clogging up the pipes, the drainage ditches, the swales. That will allow this water, once it's on land, to move off swiftly. But 50 tons is a lot of tons. That's 40 years worth of neglect because local governments didn't have the resources to be able to do it. We've got 100-year-old pipes that we basically duct tape to keep them functional with 2017 growth patterns. So there you understand the economics of it and what we're faced with. But yeah, we've made significant strides over the last 2 years. We're not close to being perfect. There still will be flooding. There still will be standing water, but it's going to be far less than what it was 2 years ago.
And what haven't you been able to do?
A lot. I mean, we haven't been able to really amp up our pump system. I mean, you're talking about tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to increase capacity in our stormwater system. Those used to be projects that the federal government would partner with us on, that they don't do that anymore. They basically abandoned cities in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and we've never been able to catch up since. So there's a lot of stuff under the ground that's not sexy, that you can't cut a ribbon on, that as a politician you don't get credit for, that is the vital lifeblood of our country.
That's going to be your Achilles heel?
I think it will be one of many. Yeah, I think it will be one of many. Yeah.
How well insured are residential and commercial property here?
My sense is pretty well. I mean, that's an individual decision largely. There are some people who don't have flood insurance. They think they're immune from floods. This storm will obviously change some minds. But yeah, there's a lot of folks who basically go bareback and don't get flood insurance, which I don't understand, but that is their personal choice.
Have you been in touch with any insurance companies the last couple of days?
Not the last couple days. We've been focused on getting ready for this, so I'm sure they will all be descending on Florida shortly.
If the city takes a direct hit and sustains bad wind damage, bad surge damage, and there's a lot of flooding, how long will it take, do you figure, to restore basic services to the point where all of the folks you've evacuated can come back in?
Probably weeks. I mean, I think over the first week, and we're staging all of our assets already to go in and sweep through on Monday afternoon or whenever the storm blows out, Tuesday morning. Police, fire, solid waste, sanitation, code enforcement, all of our front loaders, we're all ready to go and start that sweep through the city. Power will be a big problem, and the ability for the local power companies to restore power, I think, is probably the most critical thing. Depending on where you're located and how much damage, it could be weeks. But I think the city will be back to some state of sanity, of functionality, probably within a couple days.
Worst case, what do you figure the dollar value of losses might be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it depends on, you know, what the storm does. It could be hundreds of millions. It could be in the billions. I mean, you just don't know until you wake up that next day and look around and see how bad the damage has been.
And which industries are most vulnerable here?
You know, I think it's probably a combination of a lot of things. You know, obviously the port and the port industries are going to be hit pretty hard. The bulk of the areas that will be affected by this are largely residential as opposed to commercial. You know, you'll see some of the folks in downtown Tampa, if the water gets that high, that will be impacted in their day-to-day operations. But I don't think, I mean, there's no one industry that would be, you know, wiped off the face of the earth, I don't think, other than perhaps the port.
Now, Tampa has become a key hub for financial services.
Absolutely.
What do you figure happens to Citibank, to MetLife, to JP Morgan if people can't make it back here and basic services aren't restored to normal levels for weeks?
Well, we run hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions through some of these facilities. When Superstorm Sandy hit Hoboken, literally at this company called DTCC, which does all the transactions for Wall Street, has a duplicate of office down here. We were running all of those transactions when the Hoboken office was flooded for a couple of weeks. So, you know, Citi, JP Morgan, DTCC, fortunately they are largely outside of the flood zone. They're in hardened structures. They've got redundant capacities over there. What I think would be impacted for them would be if their employees are impacted. Structurally, I think they're going to be fine, but it's just getting their employees back in here to be able to do what they need to do.
All right. Mayor, thank you very much.
You bet.
A pleasure.
Likewise.
Good luck.
Thanks. Yeah.